Hey guys, tonight we're stepping through the picture window of the 1950s American suburb into the perfectly polished, casserole-scented, smiling on schedule world of the post-war housewife and into the long silence that the whole shining machine was quietly built to keep. Not with scandal, not with sirens, not with a single raised voice on the evening news. Just with bridge clubs, tranquilizers, marriage advice columns, and a telephone line you had to share with the neighbors. Before we sink in, it's lovely to have you along. If these slow histories finally switch your busy brain off at night, a quiet like or a subscribe keeps this channel going. And leave a comment letting me know which town or country you're drifting off in, and whether your own grandmother ever kept a little bottle of nerve pills rattling at the bottom of her purse. Now get comfortable. Switch the lamp off, let the fan hum, draw the blanket up under your chin, maybe set your own imaginary roast to hold at the exact edge of done, and let yourself sink into the pillow. Ever stop to wonder why the most in-demand pill in America in 1955 was named after a sleepy little town in New Jersey? How a woman could raise 4 children and run an entire household but couldn't sign for a credit card without her husband's name written underneath hers? Who decided that a single bruise simply wasn't quite cruel enough for a courtroom? The picture window, who was it really for? What counted as the correct floor polish for proving that you truly loved your family? And why could the funniest man on television shake his fist and threaten to send his wife clean to the moon every single week to a room full of laughter? Congratulations. You've just opened your eyes inside a brand new suburban tract house, 1955. You're wearing a crisp apron. Your hair is set into a helmet engineered to last the entire week. The roast is timed to the exact minute the train pulls in, and the picture window is lit just so for the street. Good luck. You are awake before the alarm, before the milk truck, before the grey light has decided whether to come. The house is yours for this 1 hour, and the hour has a job. You move through it, setting the day in order so that by the time anyone else is up, the kitchen looks as though it cleaned itself overnight. You are not resting, you are timing. Everything that happens in this house from now until dark will be arranged around the mood of a man who is still asleep upstairs. The coffee goes on first, because the coffee is not optional. The percolator on the counter is a small, temperamental colleague who has worked here for years and holds firm opinions about being rushed. You coax it along. While it mutters to itself, you move through the rooms, straightening the evidence of yesterday, plumping the cushions back into their assigned shapes, squaring the magazines on the table until their corners sit straight, square, and obedient. The house is being prepared the way a stage is prepared before the curtain goes up, except that you are the stagehand, the set, and most of the cast. This is the shift that no one counts. The day everyone can actually see begins later, when the children need feeding and the husband needs sending off. But the real work starts now, in the dark, when there is no audience and no thanks and no obvious end to it. Your job is to produce the illusion that the household runs itself, that the toast simply appears and the floors stay clean out of their own good character, and the whole machine hums along without a single visible hand on it. The hand is yours. It is just not supposed to show. Mrs. Delacroix 2 doors down is doing the exact same thing at the exact same hour. You know this for a fact. The two of you moving through parallel kitchens like a synchronized routine that no one choreographed and no one will ever watch. You have never once discussed it. You do not need to. Every lit kitchen window on the block at this hour belongs to a woman going through the same quiet overture, each of them privately convinced she is the only soul still awake. The clock on the wall is the true head of this household, and the two of you both know it. You time the eggs to it. You time the bath to it. You have an entire schedule running in your head, calibrated not to your own hunger or your own tiredness, which do not appear on any timetable anywhere, but to the precise moment the man upstairs will swing his feet onto the floor. Get the timing wrong and the day tilts. Get it right and the day merely proceeds, which is the best outcome on the menu and the one you aim for every single morning. There is a particular skill to moving silently through a house full of sleeping people, and you have mastered it the way a safecracker masters a lock. You know the third stair announces itself, so you skip it. You know the cabinet by the sink groans, so you open it slowly, the way you would once have eased a door past a sleeping baby. And there is a kind of peace in it, if you are honest. This one stolen hour, nobody needs anything from you yet. Nobody is watching to see whether you crack. The coffee smells like coffee, The light at the window is going from grey to the palest gold, and for a few minutes the performance has no spectators at all, and you can simply be the woman doing the work instead of the woman pretending the work does itself. Then a floorboard shifts overhead. The feet find the floor. The audience is awake. You straighten your apron, fix the morning onto your face the way you fix the cushions onto the couch, and the curtain goes up right on schedule. You have already been on the clock for an hour. Officially, your day is just beginning. You learn to read him the way a sailor reads the sky. By late afternoon, you are already gathering the signs, the sound of the car door, the weight of the footstep on the path, the particular way the screen door is allowed to close behind him. You have a forecast running in your head at all hours, and the forecast governs everything. What you cook, what you say, whether the children are kept up or sent quietly to their rooms. The cocktail hour is when you find out whether you read the sky correctly. By 5 o'clock, you are a trained meteorologist with a single station to monitor, and the station is a man on a commuter train. The instruments are crude but reliable. There is the sound of the car in the drive, which has a whole vocabulary of its own. The door shut softly, meaning one thing. The door shut hard, meaning gather the children. The cocktail itself is part of the apparatus. You learn to have it ready, the ice already in the glass, the bottle already open and breathing, so that the first drink can meet him at the door like a small diplomatic envoy sent ahead to negotiate the terms of the evening. The drink is supposed to soften the edges of whatever day he has had. Sometimes it does exactly that. Sometimes it is gasoline introduced to a situation that was only ever looking for a match, and you have learned to tell, from clear across the room, which kind of evening that first quiet sip is going to become. Mr. Halloran next door comes home at 6:15 sharp, and his wife Eleanor has the martini chilled and waiting on the hall table before his key is in the lock, and the two of you have never spoken a single word about why. You simply recognize each other, the way two people who have read the same difficult book recognize each other, with a small nod over the hedge and nothing said aloud. Eleanor keeps her own barometer. Hers is tuned to a different man, but it measures the very same weather, running from one fixed hour every evening to an equally uncertain dusk. The forecast governs the children most of all. On a calm reading, you let them stay up, let them be loud, let the house sound like the houses on television. On a stormy reading, you move them upstairs early and quietly, a small evacuation conducted under the gentle cover of bath time, and they go without protest because they have their own instruments now and they have read the same sky you have. They are young, and they already know how to disappear. That is a thing you notice and cannot fix, and you fold it away with all the other things you have folded away. What makes it so tiring is that the weather never clocks off. A real meteorologist goes home. You do not. The forecast runs while you cook and while you smile and while you ask, brightly, how his day was, the question itself a kind of instrument, one more reading taken before you commit to the shape of a night. His answer tells you the pressure. His tone tells you the wind. By the time the plates are down, you have made 100 tiny adjustments to the evening, none of them visible, all of them automatic, the constant, invisible, and tireless piloting of a small craft through water that only you can see. And then, most nights, nothing happens. That is the part outsiders never quite understand. Most nights the storm stays politely offshore, the drink does its job, the dinner lands, and the evening passes like any other evening on any other quiet suburban street. But you never get to know in advance which nights those will be, so you forecast all of them, every single one, with the full attention of a woman who cannot afford one missed reading. The calm nights cost you exactly as much vigilance as the others. You simply get to keep the furniture. You keep the front of the house perfect, because the front of the house is the part people see. The picture window was the whole point of the design. A single wide pane facing the street, built so the neighborhood could look in and admire what a good home is supposed to look like. So you arrange the lamp, the drapes, the bowl of wax fruit, the version of the evening that faces outward. What happens behind the window is a separate matter, and the window was never built to show it. The window is a marvel of engineering and a small daily sentence. The architects loved it. The brochures for the new developments practically sang about it. The wall of glass that brought the outdoors in and let the light flood the modern living room. Nobody in the brochure mentioned the other direction, the way the glass also let the street flood in, turning the front room into a lit display case with your family arranged inside it like the good silver. You live behind the glass, and the glass has expectations. So you stage it. The lamp goes in the window, because a warm lamp in a window at dusk is the universal signal for a happy home, and you are in the business of signals. The drapes are open exactly enough to show that you have nothing to hide, and closed exactly enough to suggest a pleasant privacy you do not actually possess. The bowl of wax fruit sits on the sill, gleaming, eternal, and untroubled, a still life that murmurs abundance and asks no questions, which is more than can be said for the real fruit, which rots and is therefore not to be trusted. Your neighbour across the street, Mrs. Vandermeer, keeps her own windows staged just as carefully, and in the evenings the two front rooms face each other across the asphalt like a pair of dioramas in a museum of contentment. You can see her lamp. She can see yours. Neither of you can see a single thing that actually matters, which is precisely the point, and which both of you maintain with the quiet dedication of curators guarding a priceless and entirely fictional exhibit. After dark, the window changes its trick. With the room lit and the street gone black, the glass stops being a window at all and becomes a mirror, throwing the lamplit room back at the people standing inside it. You can see out only by cupping your hands against the pane. The street, meanwhile, sees a perfect glowing tableau and nothing else. The family lit up like a nativity scene, and very nearly as silent. Whatever happens in that bright box after sundown happens to an audience of precisely zero, because the architecture is thoughtfully arranged for the watchers to see only themselves. The front is for showing. The showing is constant daylight and lamplight, an unbroken broadcast of a household entirely at ease. And the broadcast is so convincing, so well lit, so professionally staged, that on the bad evenings it persuades even the people standing inside it that surely a home which looks this calm from the street cannot really be the kind of home where anything is wrong. You dust the sill every day. You replace a wax apple the moment it yellows. You nudge the lamp an inch to the left when the light starts to feel untruthful. It is the most public room in the house, and you tend it like a shrine, because in a quiet way it is one. A shrine to a marriage exactly as it is meant to appear, kept lit and polished and faultless for the benefit of everyone who drives slowly past. And the street drives past, and the street approves, and the street goes home to its own lit windows, satisfied. Everyone can see the front. That is what the front is for. The window does precisely the job it was designed to do, which was never, at any single point, to let anyone actually look in. You pick up the telephone and you are never quite alone on it. The line is shared with 3 other houses on the block, which means that at any moment one of your neighbours can lift her own receiver and simply listen. You have learned the small click that tells you someone has joined. So when you need to make a call that matters, a call you do not want overheard, you stand in the hall with the receiver against your ear and you weigh exactly how much you can afford to say out loud. The party line is a small marvel of the age and a quiet civic nightmare. The telephone company strung one wire to serve several houses at once, which was thrifty and modern, and meant that your private line was private the way a park bench is private. Each household had its own ring, 2 longs and a short for you, a long and 2 shorts for the Pruitts, and everyone learned everyone else's signal within a week, the way you learn the bells of a church you happen to live beside. You can always tell when someone has lifted a receiver to listen. The line gives a soft drop in tone, a little hollowing of the air, and sometimes you can hear the careful breath of a person trying very hard to breathe quietly, which is its own particular sound, like a cat pretending to be furniture. Mrs. Okonkwo down the road is a famous and dedicated listener, and she does it with the focus of a scholar, lifting her receiver right at the dinner hour and settling in as though the whole block were a radio drama produced for her benefit alone. So the telephone, the one device that might connect you to help, comes with a built-in audience. You learn to talk in code. You learn the bright, false, and practiced cheerfulness that means the exact opposite of what it says. This shapes what is even possible. A cry for help is not only a matter of courage, it is a matter of logistics, of acoustics, of who is home and who is bored and who has quietly lifted a receiver 2 doors down. The phone that hangs on your kitchen wall, cream-coloured and heavy and modern, is a door that opens both ways, and you can never quite be sure who is standing in it. There is a public booth outside the drugstore, glass on 3 sides, a folding door that never quite seals, where a woman with a pocket full of dimes can at least be overheard only by strangers. Some women learn the walk to that booth the way they learn everything else, quietly, with a reason ready in case anyone should ask. A trip for aspirin, a look at the new magazines. The errand is real enough to survive a question, and the dimes are real, and the call, if it is made at all, is made standing up in a glass box on Main Street, because that turns out to be more private than your own home. The operator hears everything too, naturally. She sits at the exchange and connects the calls and is famous, in every small town, for knowing precisely who telephoned whom and exactly when. She is not malicious, she is simply positioned, the way everyone in this world is positioned, at a little window onto other people's lives, and the knowledge collects in her whether she wants it to or not. So the call mostly does not get made. The receiver stays on its hook. The thing that happened stays inside the house, not because there is no telephone, but because the telephone was built for a world in which nothing in a marriage was ever supposed to need saying out loud. You set down the unmade call. You go back to the dinner. The line clicks softly as, somewhere down the block, a neighbour lowers her own receiver back into its cradle, mildly disappointed, and waits for the next ring that belongs to someone else. You go to the doctor because you cannot sleep, and you come home with a small bottle that rattles. He is kind and he is busy, and he does not ask about the mark on your arm, because the mark is not what you came in about. You came in tired. He has something for tired. The little white tablets are called Miltown. Everyone is taking them, and they smooth the edges of the day into something you can stand. He writes the prescription, hands it over, and calls in the next patient. The office runs on a particular kind of speed. There is the line in the waiting room, the magazines fanned across the low table, the smell of rubbing alcohol and floor polish, the nurse calling names off a clipboard. You get your few minutes. In those minutes you are meant to present a problem the doctor can solve, and tired is a problem he can solve, so tired is what you bring him. The other thing is not on the list of complaints a doctor expects, and you have learned by now not to volunteer items that are not on the list. Miltown is the miracle of the moment. It arrived in 1955 and the country swallowed it whole. The little pill that takes the sharp corners off a day and files them down to something rounded, dulled, and bearable. Pharmacies cannot keep it on the shelf. There are signs hung in the windows, out of Miltown, more tomorrow, as though it were a holiday ham. It is prescribed for nerves, for tension, for the vague modern complaint of a woman who has everything and somehow cannot sleep, and it works, in the sense that a sandbag works against a flood, which is to say briefly and without doing one thing about the river. Dr. Ostrowski writes the script in a hand only the pharmacist can read, tears the slip from the pad with a practiced flick of the wrist, and is already half turned toward the door, because there are 11 more names in the book and the afternoon is short. He does not ask how the tiredness began. He does not ask about the arm, held a little stiffly against your side, or the sunglasses you did not take off in the dim of his office. These are not questions the appointment has time for, and they are not questions anyone ever taught him to ask, and so the bruise and the prescription pass each other in the hall without once being introduced. You arrive unable to sleep and you leave with a reason to sleep, and the thing that is actually keeping you awake stays precisely where it was, untouched, unnamed, now merely a little easier to lie still beside. The pill does not fix the marriage. The pill fixes you, just enough, so that the marriage can carry on. The bottle goes into your purse, where it joins the other small tools of management, and it rattles a little when you walk, a private sound that only you can hear. You take one, and the edges go soft, and the magazines on the waiting room table run the very same logic in print. There, between the recipes and the dress patterns, sit the advertisements. A serene woman at last at peace. Ask your doctor, because tension is the enemy and calm is for sale, and the source of the tension is never once pictured in the frame. The whole apparatus points in a single direction. Tired? Here is something for tired. There is something now for nearly every feeling a person can have, a pill for each one, except for the single situation no pill was ever going to reach, which is the situation you walked in carrying and will shortly walk back out into, now gently sedated, problem managed, cause entirely intact. You have a routine for the mornings after, and you perform it before anyone is awake to see. There is the salon set that has to last the week, the pancake foundation pressed carefully over the place on your cheek, the long sleeves chosen for a warm day, the sunglasses you will wear into the supermarket and not take off. None of it is decoration. It is the maintenance of a surface, and the surface is the thing the whole house depends on. By breakfast you look like a woman to whom nothing at all has happened. The kit lives in the bathroom cabinet and the bedroom drawer, and you know it better than you know most people. There is the pancake foundation, The heavy theatrical kind that Max Factor first invented for the movies, built to hold a face together under hot studio lights and to hold a good deal else together under a kitchen bulb. There is the powder. There is the careful pencil work. There is the long-sleeved blouse pulled from the back of the closet on a morning that does not call for it, and the silk scarf, and the dark glasses that turn a bright day into a convenient excuse. You apply it all with the steady hand of a restorer working over a damaged painting, because in a sense that is exactly the job. The damage is to be made invisible, not healed, only invisible, which is faster, and which is all that the day actually requires. By the time the children come down, the restoration is complete. The woman at the stove is composed, pleasant, and entirely intact. The brushwork does not show. It never shows. That is the only measure of whether it was done well. The weekly trip to the salon is part of the same system. You sit beneath the warm hood of the dryer in a long row of women, the air gone sharp with permanent wave solution, and you come out with a set that has to survive a whole week of living, which means it is built like architecture and defended like a small fortress. Renata, who does your hair and has done it for years, knows things she does not say, the way hairdressers always somehow do. She works close to your scalp and sees what the powder is covering, and she keeps her own counsel, and she presses a little extra spray along the temple without being asked, an act of pure solidarity conducted entirely in the language of hairspray. None of this is vanity, though it would photograph as vanity. It is labour, and it is strategy, and it is tiring, in a way that vanity never is. Vanity is for pleasure. This is for the survival of the surface, and the surface is load-bearing. Let it crack in public, at the market, at the school gate, in the pew, and the questions begin, and the questions are the one thing this whole structure exists to prevent. So you do not let it crack. You maintain it the way a town maintains the old dam above it, daily, without applause, because the only alternative on offer is the flood. There is a particular loneliness in being good at this. The better the work, the more invisible the need for it, and the more invisible the need, the more alone you are inside it. Then you step out into the day, foundation set, hair holding, glasses on, and you move through the bright public world as a woman to whom nothing has happened, and the world believes you completely, because the world very much wants to, and because you are, by now, extremely good at your work. The cabinet clicks shut, the drawer slides closed. Tomorrow, if tomorrow should need it, the kit will be waiting exactly where you left it, ready, like everything else in this house, to do its quiet work that no one will ever see and no one will ever name. You read the column in the magazine the way other people read scripture. It runs every month. It is called, "Can This Marriage Be Saved?" And it tells the story of a troubled couple and then explains, gently and at length, what the wife might do to fix things. You recognize yourself in it, or you are meant to. There is always a small assignment buried in the advice, a way you could be softer, prettier, more patient, more grateful. You fold the page back at the corner and you start your homework. The column is an institution. It runs in the Ladies' Home Journal under a title that is also a promise, and each month it lays out a couple in trouble, the wife's account and then the husband's, and then the verdict of the counsellor, which is basically a TED Talk that lands, every single month, on the very same closing slide. The verdict, month after month, year after year, arrives at the very same gentle destination. Yes, the marriage can be saved. It will simply require the wife to try a little harder. You read it the way you would read a horoscope written personally for you, hunting for yourself in the troubled wife, and you are never once disappointed, because the troubled wife is built to be you. She expects too much. She has let herself go. She nags, she sulks, she fails to grasp the pressures her husband carries on his shoulders. The counsellor is kind about all of it, the way a man is kind when he is entirely certain he is right. And the kindness somehow makes the assignment heavier rather than lighter. The assignment is always in there, tucked into the advice like a coin baked into a cake. Be more cheerful when he comes home. Take more care with your appearance. Make the house a refuge and not a second place of work. Do not meet him at the door with your complaints. The list runs on, and it is entirely one-directional, a long series of adjustments to be made by exactly one person in the marriage, and that person is the one holding the magazine because the other person does not read this magazine. Mrs. Pemberton, across the way, clips the columns and keeps them in a kitchen drawer, a small, private and faithful archive of self-improvement, and the two of you discuss them over coffee the way you might discuss a recipe. This one's wife was clearly difficult, that one ought to count her blessings. You are studying. You are genuinely trying to learn. The magazine has persuaded you both that there is a real technique to this, a correct way to be a wife, and that mastering it is only a matter of effort and attention, both of which you have in great supply. What the column never once prints, in all its long and famous years, is a wife it cannot fix. The format recognizes exactly two valid endings, and both of them are the same marriage, saved. There is no case in the archive that the counsellor diagnoses as the husband's to solve, no month in which the advice is simply that she should go, no issue for which the answer to the title's question is, painfully, no. The format does not permit it. The format is a machine that takes a troubled marriage in one end and produces, every single time, a saved one, powered start to finish by the wife's willingness to keep adjusting herself to fit. So you fold the page back at the corner and you begin your homework again, because the magazine is so sure it can be saved, and you would very much like to believe the magazine. You will be more cheerful. You will take more care. You will make the house a refuge. And when it does not work, when the technique fails the way it keeps quietly failing, the column already has an answer waiting for that too, printed up in next month's issue, and the answer is that you must simply have gone and applied it wrong. You go to the marriage counsellor because someone told you that is what sensible people do, and you sit in the chair and you try to explain. He listens. He nods. And then, somewhere in the conversation, the question arrives that you did not expect, the one that turns the whole car around. What, he wants to know, do you think you might be doing to set him off? The entire session is built on a quiet assumption that the trouble has a cause, and that the cause is the person sitting in your chair. The office is panelled in something warm, hushed and reassuring, and the man behind the desk has framed certificates and a low, unhurried voice. He may well work for the American Institute of Family Relations, the largest such operation in the entire world, run by a man the newspapers fondly call Mr. Marriage. The whole profession is new and confident and certain that troubled homes can be repaired with the right small adjustments, and you have come, hopefully, like a clock to a clockmaker, to be set right. You try to say the true thing. You approach it sideways, because saying it straight out is more than you can manage, and you watch his face for the spot where he will finally understand, but the conversation refuses to go where you are steering it. He listens, he nods, and then, gently, reasonably, he asks the question that turns the car around. What do you suppose you might be doing to provoke these episodes? And just like that, quietly, the subject of the meeting has become you. No one in the room finds it strange. The framework is simply built this way. A husband's temper is treated as a fact of nature, like rain, and the only sensible response to rain is to examine your own umbrella. So the questions arrive, one after another, about your housekeeping, your moods, your appearance, your habits. Each one, a small flashlight pointed firmly back at you, lighting up everything in the room except the single thing you came to talk about. Dr. Vance writes notes on a yellow pad while you answer, and his pen moves most when you describe your own shortcomings, of which you have plenty, because everyone does, and which are now somehow the agenda. He is not unkind. He believes he is helping you. He holds a whole theory of marriage in which friction is a shared production with a shared solution, and the shared solution, by some arithmetic that always lands in the same place, turns out to be a list of things for the wife to go home and do differently. You leave with the list. You always leave with a list. Be softer here, firmer there, more attentive, less sensitive, and above all, do not antagonize. The list quietly assumes that the violence is a response, that it has a trigger, and that the trigger sits within your power to remove if only you are careful and clever and good enough. It is a strangely flattering theory as long as you do not look at it straight on. It tells you that you have control. It simply locates that control in the one place it can never actually be. And so you drive home carrying homework from the counsellor to match the homework from the magazine, two professionals in perfect, gentle agreement that the problem has a cause, and the cause is your own conduct. You will try the list. Of course you will. But somewhere on the drive home a small cold thought arrives and settles into the seat beside you. The thought that you have now asked the experts, the official ones, the certified ones with the framed certificates, and that every last one of them has handed the problem politely back to you. You go to the minister because he is the one person you are certain will not repeat it, and you tell him as much of the truth as you dare. He is gentle, he takes your hand, and the counsel he gives you, the counsel he is entirely certain is right, is to pray, to be patient, to be the wife the home needs, and above all, to keep the family together. Divorce is a scandal, and very likely a sin. He sends you back out through the same door you came in, carrying the very same thing. The church is the one institution you trust to keep a secret, and so the minister's study, with its shelves of dark books and its smell of candle wax and old hymnals, feels like the safest room you have stepped into in a long time. Reverend Atherton is a gentle man with soft hands and real concern in his face, and when you finally manage to say a portion of the truth, he leans forward and folds both your hands in his, and for one bright moment you believe you have at last found the door. Then he begins to counsel you, and the door turns out to open back into the same house. He speaks of patience, of the cross each of us is given to carry, of the sanctity of the vow you made before God on your wedding day. He reminds you that marriage is for life, that the family must be preserved at almost any price, that a wife's gentleness can soften even a hard man given enough time. Every word is kind. Every word points in precisely one direction, and the direction is home. Submission hangs in the air of the room, though he is far too gentle to swing the word like a hammer. The teaching is old and deep and everywhere at once, that the husband is the head of the wife, that her real strength lies in her yielding, that a good woman holds a difficult marriage together through prayer and patience and the quiet force of her own example. He offers it to you as comfort. He fully believes it is comfort. It settles onto you instead like one more quiet, patient, and immovable duty laid across a load already heavier than you can lift. And behind all of it stands the great unspeakable word, divorce, which in this room and this decade is very nearly the worst fate that can befall a family. It is scandal. It may well be sin. It would mark you, and mark your children, and trail you down every street in town for the rest of your life. The minister does not threaten you with any of this. He has no need to. The whole crushing weight of it is simply present in the room, the way gravity is present, holding everything exactly where it already sat. So you understand, sitting there with your hands warm in his, that even here, even in the one room you trusted, the counsel is to turn around and go back. Pray harder. Be patient. Be gentle. Keep the family whole. He means every word as love, and in his own way it is love. The love of a man who simply cannot make out the shape of the thing you carried in, because his whole life and training have taught him to see something else entirely. A marriage to be salvaged rather than a woman to be sheltered. He walks you to the door of the study and blesses you on the threshold, and you step back out into the bright afternoon carrying precisely what you carried in, plus a fresh set of instructions for enduring it more graciously. The candles burn on quietly behind you. The books sit in their long rows. You have been heard, gently and fully, by a genuinely kind man, and you are going home for exactly the reasons you came hoping to be told that you could finally leave. You go to the bank to do a simple thing, and you discover the thing is not yours to do. The account is in his name. The credit is extended to him. The house is mortgaged to him. You can shop on the account he permits, but you cannot open one of your own, cannot take out a loan, cannot hold a card with your own name on it without his signature written underneath yours. The teller is perfectly polite about all of it. It is simply how it works. You leave with exactly the independence you walked in with. The bank is a temple of marble and brass, hushed, vaulted, and important, and you walk into it as a grown woman who runs a household, raises children, manages a weekly budget down to the last dime, and balances figures in her head while stirring a pot on the stove. You are, by any honest measure, a skilled financial manager. You are also, in the eyes of this particular building, not quite a full customer, because the money you handle so carefully every day is not, in any legal sense the bank recognizes, yours. Mr. Caldwell at the desk is pleasant enough about it. He explains, in the patient tone a man reserves for children and wives, that an account requires your husband's signature, that credit is extended to the man of the house, that a loan in your own name is simply not a thing the bank does. He is not being cruel. He is only reciting the world as it stands, a world in which a married woman's whole financial existence is folded inside her husband's, like a small letter sealed inside a much larger envelope addressed to someone else. So you grasp, standing at the cool marble counter, the simple architecture of the trap. The grocery money comes from him. The roof belongs to him. The car is his. Every dollar that passes through your careful hands arrives on loan from a man whose name is on absolutely everything, and leaving him would mean leaving all of it at once: the house, the account, the credit, the car in the drive, and stepping out into the world with no financial record to your name at all, as though you had been born yesterday already wearing a wedding ring. You have heard of women who try to put a little aside, a few coins skimmed quietly from the grocery budget each week and hidden in a coffee tin or down in the toe of a winter boot, building a small private fund the slow way, 1 dime at a time. It is the only bank truly available to you, this tin can savings plan, and it is painfully slow, and it can be found, and a discovered tin is its own kind of catastrophe, but it is something. For some women, that boot is the only thing in the entire world that is actually theirs. It would be nearly 20 years before the law finally caught up, before an act of Congress made it illegal to deny a woman credit for the simple offense of being a woman. But that is a door at the far end of a long hallway you are standing in right now, and it does not help you today. Today the rule is the rule. Today the bank smiles and shakes its head. Today your skill and your labor and your careful arithmetic add up, in the only ledger that counts, to precisely nothing that you can hold in your hand. You leave the cool marble building and step back out into the sun, and you walk home past the tidy houses to the kitchen where you will, that very afternoon, manage money expertly all over again. The contradiction barely registers anymore, that you are trusted to run the entire financial life of a family and not trusted to own a single dollar of it. You put the groceries away, you carry the total in your head. The tin in the boot gains 1 more dime and waits, right there with you, for a hallway door that has not yet opened. You find out what leaving would actually require, and the answer is a courtroom. To end the marriage, you have to prove a wrong, and the wrong has a name: cruelty, and the name comes with a price. You will need evidence. You will need witnesses willing to stand up and say what they saw. A single bad night is not enough. The court wants a pattern, documented, corroborated, spoken aloud in front of strangers in a public room. You sit across from the lawyer, and you slowly understand that the law has set the door very far away. The lawyer's office is up a narrow flight of stairs above the hardware store, and the lawyer himself is a decent man who lays it out for you straight, which is already more than most people have done. To end a marriage, he explains, you cannot simply wish it ended. You must sue. You must accuse. You must stand up before a court and prove that your husband did a specific, recognized wrong, and you must do it with evidence the court will actually accept, which turns out to be a very particular and demanding thing. Cruelty is one of the grounds, in your state as in most, but the word does not mean in a courtroom what it means in your own house. The court has heard everything, and is hard to impress. It wants a pattern, documented and dated. It wants corroboration, which is the polite legal word for witnesses, real people willing to sit in a public room and swear to what they saw with their own eyes. A single terrible night, with no one watching and no marks that lasted the week, is, in the cool, dry language of the law, insufficient. So you do the arithmetic of proof, and it is grim, cold, and careful arithmetic. Who saw? Who would testify? Who, among your careful neighbours with their averted eyes and their endless weather conversations, would climb those narrow stairs and then climb into a witness box and say the thing out loud? The list of such people, you realise in the lawyer's chair, is distressingly close to empty. The very privacy you maintained so beautifully has become a wall built around your own escape. Mr. Lindqvist, the attorney, is sympathetic and clear-eyed about the odds. He has watched women try this and lose, watched the cross-examination slowly turn the wife into the defendant, watched a husband's lawyer paint a portrait of a nagging, unstable woman who drove a good man past his limit, and watched a judge nod along, because the judge grew up reading the very same magazines as everyone else in town. Winning is possible. It is simply expensive and public and slow and far from certain, and the price of losing is going home to the man you just stood up in court to leave. And even a clean victory comes wrapped in scandal. A divorced woman in this town carries a mark visible from a good distance, a quiet question that walks into every room a half step ahead of her, a shadow that falls across her children at school. The law, in theory, holds out a door, But the door sits at the top of a hard flight of stairs. It costs money you are not permitted to have, it demands witnesses you do not have, and it opens, even at its very best, onto a street where everyone already knows your name. You thank Mr. Lindqvist and you go back down the narrow stairs past the hardware store, into the ordinary afternoon, the grocery list still folded in your purse. The law has not exactly refused you. It has simply named its price, and the price is a mountain of proof you cannot assemble, and a public ordeal you might not survive whole. Years from now they will invent a kinder door, one that needs no fault and no witnesses and no accusation at all. But that door has not been built yet, and you are standing here now, holding the grocery list, doing the math. You call the police on the worst night, and what arrives is two patient men who would rather be just about anywhere else. They stand in the doorway, they do not come in very far. They have been trained, by long custom rather than by any written rule, to see this as a family matter, a private thing between a husband and a wife, the sort of dispute that tends to sort itself out by morning. They suggest that everyone calm down. They write almost nothing in the log, and what little they write down says, disturbance. When the patrol car finally pulls up, its arrival is itself an event on a quiet street, and you are aware, even in the middle of everything, of the curtains shifting in the dark houses opposite. Two officers come up the walk, unhurried, weary, and faintly bored, and they stop at the threshold. They do not, you will notice, come very far inside. The doorway is where this kind of call gets handled, the doorway, and not the living room, because the doorway is the precise border of the thing they have been taught never to cross. They are not bad men, particularly. They are simply trained, by custom rather than by any manual, to read a call like this as a domestic, a family matter, a private squall between a husband and a wife that is really none of the law's business and will likely blow itself out by morning. The category does all the work. Once a thing has been filed under family matter, the entire machinery of the state that would leap into motion for any other assault on earth simply goes quiet and folds its arms there in your doorway. So they talk to him, man to man, out on the porch, in low and reasonable voices, and the conversation takes on the easy tone of two fellows helping a third through a rough patch. They suggest he take a walk and cool off. They suggest everyone get some sleep. To you they offer a few mild words about staying calm, as though the temperature of the evening had been a joint decision, a thermostat the two of you were squabbling over, rather than something that was done to you in your own kitchen with the children listening upstairs. Officer Brandt has a notebook, and he writes very little in it. There is no box on his form for what actually happened, no category that fits the shape of it, and so the incident is recorded, if it is recorded at all, under the grey and weightless word disturbance, which could just as easily mean a loud party or a barking dog or a tree down across the road. The word is a small marvel of not saying. By the time it reaches any file at all, the night has been quietly laundered into nothing. Disturbance. Resolved. No further action. And then they leave. The car pulls away, the curtains opposite settle back into place, and you are standing in the doorway they declined to cross, alone again with the man they have just gently advised to get some rest. Nothing has been arrested. Nothing has been written down that anyone could ever find. The one institution with the actual power to step in has come all the way to your house, looked the whole situation square in the face, called it weather, and driven off into the dark to go answer a call about something it considers more serious. It will be decades before any of this changes, before departments are finally made to write down the relationship and the injury, before the family matter is at last reclassified as the crime it always quietly was. Tonight the procedure is simply the procedure. Tonight the word is disturbance. You close the door the officers would not walk through, and the whole street rolls back over and sleeps, satisfied that the men in the car have handled it, whatever it was. You meet your neighbour at the mailbox the morning after, and the two of you perform a small, well-practiced play. She has heard. The walls are thin, and the windows were open, and of course she has heard. But the rules of the street are clear, and the rules say that she asks about the weather and you answer about the weather, and neither of you so much as glances at the thing you both know perfectly well. To say it out loud would be unforgivably rude. So you discuss the forecast, agree on rain, and go inside. The mailbox stands at the end of the drive, and the morning trip out to it is one of the few moments the whole street quietly shares. You step out, she steps out, the boxes are checked, and there, across the low hedge, the two of you meet. She heard. You know she heard, and she knows that you know, because the walls of these houses are thin as crackers and the windows were open to the summer, and sound travels in a tract development the way gossip travels in a church. And yet the script you both follow has no line in it for any of that. Good morning. Good morning. Looks like rain later. The two of you discuss the sky with the focused commitment of diplomats negotiating a fragile treaty, and in a way that is precisely what it is, an agreement, renewed daily over the hedge, that certain subjects do not exist between you. The weather is the safe, quiet and familiar little country you both retreat into, neutral ground, and you tend the conversation there carefully, because the moment it strays you are both of you in danger. Mrs. Calloway is not cold. That is the thing an outsider would miss entirely. There is real warmth in how she asks after your mother, real interest in your boy's new tooth, a genuine fondness built up over years of hedgeside mornings. She is kind. She is simply also bound, every bit as tightly as you are, by the one rule that governs every house on this block, which is that whatever happens behind a door is the sole property of the people behind it, and to mention it is a trespass counted worse than the thing itself. So she will not ask. Even if some part of her wants to, even if some morning the words climb right up to the edge of her teeth, she will not ask, because the asking would break something she leans on too. Her own front is held together by exactly the effort yours takes. If she pulls the loose thread on your privacy, she has pulled it on her own as well, and then where would the two of you be? Two unravelled women standing in their bathrobes at the end of the drive with the mail in their hands and absolutely nothing left to say. There is strangely a kind of comfort in the routine, even knowing exactly what it costs, the sheer predictability of it, the certainty that no one will make you explain, that the bruise beneath the powder will go politely unremarked, that you can stand in the open morning air for 90 seconds and simply be, for 90 seconds, a neighbour discussing the forecast. It is not nothing. In a life with very few private moments, a conversation that gently refuses to see you is its own small mercy, and you take it gladly. Then the mail is sorted, the bills and the catalogues and the letter from no one in particular, and the two of you turn back toward your separate houses with one last word about the coming rain. The little play is over for the day. It will run again tomorrow. Same stage, same lines, two practiced actresses who know the entire script by heart and would not change a single word of it for anything in the world, because the script is the one thing keeping them both, this bright morning, upright and unremarked and safely out of each other's terrible business. You go home to your mother because there is nowhere else to go, and you sit at her kitchen table and you tell her you cannot do it anymore. She listens, she pours the coffee, and then she says the thing her own mother said to her, that marriage is hard, that every man has his temper, that a wife makes her bed and lies in it, that the children need their father under their own roof. She means every word of it as love. By the next morning, she has helped you fold your things to go back. Your mother's kitchen has not changed since you were a girl. The same oilcloth on the table, the same hum from the icebox, the same light falling in over the sink at this hour, and walking into it with your small suitcase you feel, for one moment, like you have come home in every sense, like a door has finally opened onto safety. She takes one look at your face and puts the kettle on, because that is what her hands do when there is trouble, and you sit at the worn oilcloth and the whole story comes out of you at last. She listens to all of it. She does not interrupt once. She pours the coffee dark, strong and bitter and pushes the sugar bowl toward you, and her own face, as you talk, moves through several kinds of weather, and you let yourself believe, watching her, that she is about to say the one thing you drove all the way across town hoping to hear, which is simply, in the plainest words, that you do not have to go back. But that is not the thing she says. What she says when you have finally finished is older than she is. She says that marriage is hard, that no one ever told her it would be easy. She says that every man has his temper and a wife learns over time to manage it. She says that a woman makes her bed and then she lies in it, and that the children most of all, need their father and their home and their own roof above their heads. She says it the way you say a prayer learned in childhood, without needing to think. And the worst part, the part that quietly closes your throat, is that she means all of it as love. This is not cruelty. This is the wisdom handed to her by her own mother in this very kitchen, the survival manual passed woman to woman down a long line of difficult marriages, and she is giving it to you because it is the most precious and protective thing she owns. Go back. Endure. Manage him. Hold the family together. It kept her standing upright. She cannot imagine that handing it down to you is anything other than a gift. She did it herself, you understand, sitting there. The realization arrives quietly and rearranges the whole kitchen around you. The set of her shoulders, the way she never quite finished certain sentences across your childhood. The afternoons your father's mood filled the house like a gas with no smell. She survived a version of your own life by following the exact advice she is now pressing into your hands. And to tell you to leave would be to admit that she herself did not have to stay. So by morning the suitcase is packed again, by her hands as much as your own, the blouse folded with the particular care she always used, and she walks you out to the car with a sandwich wrapped in waxed paper for the long drive. She holds your face in both her hands at the door. Be good to him, she says, and she means be safe, and she no longer knows how to say the one without saying the other. You drive back the way you came. The waxed paper sandwich sits on the seat beside you, untouched, the whole way home. You host the Tupperware party because it is your turn, and a turn is not really optional. The women arrive in their good dresses, the containers are arranged in bright rows on your dining table, and for 2 hours your living room becomes a small stage. They are here to buy plastic and to admire your home, and as far as the afternoon is concerned, the two errands are the same. They will note the polish on the floor, the calm of the rooms, the evidence that here lives a woman with everything well in order. You serve the little sandwiches and you give them the performance. The party has its rules, and you know them the way you know the words to the anthem. The house must be spotless, not ordinary spotless, but inspection spotless, because the women coming are not only customers, they are assessors, and a Tupperware party is at least half a viewing of your home and your marriage conducted under the friendly cover of buying plastic. You bake the morning of, you polish the night before, you set out the good cups and you fold the napkins twice. The product itself is a small marvel, these airtight bowls in cheerful colours that promise to keep everything fresh and sealed and perfectly under control, which is, when you stop to think about it, the exact thing every woman in your living room is being sold on every front. Brownie Wise built a whole empire on the notion, sending housewives out to sell to housewives in their own front rooms, an entire economy run on coffee and burping lids and the quiet pressure of a room full of watching peers. You demonstrate the seal. Everyone admires the seal. But the real transaction in the room is never the plastic, it is the surface. The women note, without ever once appearing to note, the wax on your floor and the calm in your hallway and the way your own children are scrubbed and pleasant, and conveniently absent on cue. They are reading your home the way you read your husband, for the small signs, and you have prepared the whole house to be read well, every cushion an alibi, every gleaming countertop, a small sworn statement that here lives a woman with absolutely everything under control. Mrs. Hubbard, who throws the best parties on the block, has it all down to a science, and you have learned plenty from watching her. The timing of the coffee, the little sandwiches cut into neat triangles, the brightness held at exactly the right pitch for 2 unbroken hours. You match her now. You move through your own party as a flawless hostess, warm, easy, and tireless, and not one of the dozen women drinking your coffee has the faintest idea that you dressed a bruise this morning before you ever frosted the cake. And here is the strange mercy of it, the part you would never say aloud to anyone. The performance protects you. For 2 hours you are exactly the woman you are pretending to be, busy and admired and entirely in command of your bright little kingdom. The party is a lie, but it is a lie you get to live inside for 1 whole afternoon, and inside it you are fine, genuinely fine, the way you almost never are, and when the door closes behind the last guest you feel the loss of it like a lamp clicked off. Then the cups are washed and the folding chairs are stacked and the orders are tallied up for Mrs. Wise's distant empire, and the house goes quiet, and you are alone in it again with the wax and the silence and the bruise the powder is still faithfully hiding. The party was a triumph. Everyone said so on the way out. You sold a great deal of plastic designed to keep things sealed and fresh and airtight, and you sold, far more successfully, the airtight thing you have been selling all along, which is the smooth and frictionless surface of a home no one will ever be allowed to open. You sit down to bridge on Thursday with the same 3 women you have played with for years, and you all know the rule even though no one has ever once said it aloud. You can talk about the children, the recipes, the difficult mother-in-law, the rising price of beef. You cannot talk about the other thing. The cards give your hands something to do and the chatter gives the silence something to wear. Around that table, 4 marriages are being quietly carried, and not a single one of them will be set down here. Bridge is serious business on this street. A standing Thursday appointment that has outlasted pregnancies and moves and one funeral, and the four of you have been playing together so long that the game very nearly runs itself. The cards are dealt, the bids are made, the little pencil keeps the score, and underneath the brisk and familiar motion of all of it, 4 entire lives are sitting very still and saying nothing whatsoever about themselves. The conversation has its permitted channels, worn smooth by years of careful use. You may discuss the children at length. You may discuss recipes, the new freezer, the price of a roast, the difficult mother-in-law, the minister's sermon, the small scandal of someone safely 2 streets over. These are the open roads. And then there are the closed ones, the subjects the 4 of you steer around so smoothly and so automatically that a stranger watching the table would never once guess they were there, because you are fairly sure by now that you are not the only one. There is a way Dorothy laughs a half-second too late sometimes, a way Marjorie wears long sleeves in a warm room, a sudden stillness that comes over Patricia whenever a car door slams out in the street. You have never confirmed a thing. You never will. But you have played enough hands across enough years to read a table, and you would put money, if you had any money of your own, on the quiet arithmetic that says at least one other woman here carries home exactly what you do, and still no one says it. The rule holds even here, even among the 3 people on earth most likely to understand, because saying it would change everything and solve nothing at all. It would turn a pleasant Thursday into a crisis. It would put a thing into the room that could not afterward be taken back out. It would ask each of them to choose between comforting you and protecting herself, and you love them all far too well to make them choose, and so you simply deal the next hand instead. So the cards do a kind of work their makers never intended. They give 4 pairs of hands something to do that is not ringing, and they give the unspoken thing in the room roughly the size of a card table, somewhere to hide. They give 4 mouths a steady supply of safe words, 2 clubs, 3 no trump, your bid, partner, that fill the air so completely that the dangerous words have no room left to surface. The game is a structure built for precisely this, a way to spend 3 hours close, careful, and entirely guarded, present and hidden at the very same time, which is the only way that any of you knows how to be. The rubber ends, the scores are added up, the winner is gracious, and the losers are good sports, and the 4 of you gather the cards and the coffee cups and say what a perfectly lovely afternoon it was, and you mean it, because it genuinely was. Then you go back to your 4 separate houses and 4 separate evenings you will never once describe to one another, each of you carrying your own in the same careful silence, until next Thursday, when you will sit down together again and once more not say it, gently, over the cards. You watch the Andersons every week, and you measure your own life against theirs. Father knows best, mother wears pearls to run the vacuum, and the children's troubles are solved in 22 minutes and 1 warm conversation by the fireplace. No one on the screen ever raises a hand. No one drinks too much. The family is lit evenly and loves easily, and is handed to you not as a fantasy but as a standard, the ordinary American home you are apparently failing to run. You switch off the set, and the comparison stays behind in the room. The television is still new, and it glows in the corner of the den like a small domestic hearth, and the families who live inside it are flawless. The Andersons are the gold standard, but the whole dial agrees with them. A nation of evenly lit living rooms where the father is wise and patient, the mother is serene in her pearls, and the very worst thing that ever happens is a misunderstanding about a borrowed bicycle, gently sorted out and forgiven before the closing music plays. You watch them with your mending in your lap, and you cannot help the comparison, because the comparison is the entire point of the broadcast. This is not offered to you as a fairy tale. It is offered as a kind of documentary, a picture of the normal, ordinary, perfectly achievable American family, the kind everyone you know is presumably running with ease, the kind you are evidently failing to run, since yours does not look anything like this and never once has. Jim Anderson never raises his voice. That is the small detail that does the quiet damage. He comes home from the office, he loosens his tie, he hands out calm and fatherly wisdom, and he never, across years of episodes, frightens a single soul in his house. And because he is presented as simply what a father is, what a normal husband does of an evening, his behaviour becomes the baseline against which your own evenings get silently measured, and your evenings come up strange, come up wrong, come up like a problem that must live specifically and shamefully in you. Margaret Anderson, the mother, floats through her house, solving everything with a warm word and a casserole, untroubled, unhurried, and beloved by all. You study her the way you study the wife in the magazine, hunting for the technique, because surely she knows something you do not. Surely there is a way of being that she has mastered that keeps a whole household this gentle. It does not occur to you, watching there in the dark, that she is an actress reading lines on a soundstage, because the entire power of the thing depends precisely on it not occurring to you. If every home on television is this serene, and every home on your own street keeps its picture window lit and its hedges square, then you can only conclude that yours is the single exception, the one house on the block, in the town, in the entire country, where things are not right. The show everyone is putting on becomes the proof, delivered to each woman watching alone in her den, that she is uniquely and privately broken. So, you turn off the set at the end of the evening, and the little screen goes dark with a soft electric sigh and a shrinking point of white light, and the perfect family folds itself neatly away until next week. But the standard does not fold away with it. It stays in the room, hanging in the air over your real and complicated evening like a held note, the impossible measure you go on quietly failing to meet, brought to you faithfully every single week, sponsored and scheduled and beamed straight into the den to keep you company in the certainty that the trouble is yours alone. You laugh at the show because the whole country laughs at the show, and the show is built around a joke you happen to know from the inside. The big loud husband shakes his fist at his wife and bellows that one of these days, he will send her straight to the moon, and the studio audience roars with delight. It is the most beloved comedy of its kind. The threat is the punchline, delivered weekly into living rooms exactly like yours, and the laughter that follows it is the sound of a nation agreeing not to take it seriously. You laugh too, sitting there in the den, because it is genuinely funny in the way it is performed, the bluster, the bug-eyed rage, the way the wife just folds her arms and waits him out, calm, certain, and unimpressed, because they both know perfectly well he will never do it. That is the joke, supposedly. He is all noise. The threat is empty, the wife is unbothered, and the whole comedy lives in the gap between his fury and his harmlessness. Everyone understands the convention. Everyone is happily in on it, but you are watching it from a particular seat, and from that seat the joke takes on a strange double exposure. You know what a raised fist looks like when it is not a punchline. You know that bug-eyed rage from somewhere that had no laugh track running underneath it, and so the bit lands twice in you, once as comedy, the way it is built and meant to, and once as something else entirely, a thing you live quietly folded back into entertainment and handed out to the whole nation to enjoy along with its dinner. What the show does, without intending a thing by it, is set the dial. It takes the raised hand and the bellowed threat, and files them neatly under harmless, under marriage, under the ordinary friction between a husband and a wife, the stuff of primetime comedy rather than the stuff of police reports. A whole country learns, laughing, that this is simply what marriage sounds like. The man roaring, the woman waiting it out, all of it just a bit, all of it just a character being himself, nothing to see and nothing to name, and the laughter does something quiet to the silence in your own house. If the entire nation finds the raised fist funny, if it is the beloved centerpiece of the most beloved show, then what exactly would you be claiming? If you ever suggested that in your home it was not a joke, you would be the woman with no sense of humor. You would be the one taking a punchline literally. The comedy is quietly closed off the very words you might have reached for by getting there first and turning them into a national catchphrase. There is a particular loneliness in laughing along on cue. The room expects it, the moment calls for it, and so you produce the laugh like you produce everything else, on time and convincingly, while some other part of you sits very still a few feet behind your own face. No one in the den notices. The laugh is good. You have had, by now, a great deal of practice at making the expected sound arrive exactly when it is supposed to, regardless of what is happening underneath it. The episode ends the way it always ends, with the big man deflating all at once into sudden tenderness, telling her she is the greatest, and the audience going warm, and the music swelling up, and the threat from the first act entirely forgotten, dissolved completely in the glow of a happy ending. You turn it off. In the den, it is quiet now. The most watched marriage in America has spent another half hour teaching the whole country to laugh at the exact sound you spend your entire life listening for, and to call it, fondly, love. You go to the company picnic as half of your husband's resume. The men talk shop by the grill and the wives are arranged on the blankets nearby. And everyone present understands that you are being looked at and quietly weighed. A good wife, poised and pleasant and visibly content, is a point in his favour with the men who decide his future. A wife who seems unhappy is a small question mark on his file. So you smile, you charm the boss, you carry out the potato salad, and you keep the surface flawless for the sake of a promotion that is his. The picnic is held every June at a park with long tables and a softball diamond, and it is presented to everyone as a day of leisure, which it is not for the wives. For the wives it is a working day, possibly the most important one of the whole year, because the men who run the company will be there with their own wives, watching, and a great deal of what they decide about your husband's future will get settled over potato salad and lemonade by people who would never once admit they were deciding anything at all. You are, on this particular day, an exhibit. The corporate world of this decade believes, sincerely and right out loud, that a man's wife is a clear window into the man himself, that a poised and charming and visibly happy wife signals a stable, sober, and promotable employee, while an awkward or unhappy one raises a quiet little question about his judgment and his command of his own household. So you are dressed correctly, you are smiling correctly, and you are working the long tables like a woman whose family's whole income depends on it, because it more or less does. Mr. Garrett, the division head, is the one to charm, and his wife Adele is the one to befriend, and you do both with a skill that no one present will ever credit as skill, remembering the names of their grandchildren, admiring Adele's new hat, laughing at Mr. Garrett's long story about the fishing trip at exactly the right volume. And underneath the whole bright display runs the usual private current, the careful ongoing management of the man beside you, who is drinking in the June sun among his colleagues and whose mood you are tracking even now, even here, even as you charm his boss by the lemonade. You have two jobs at this picnic, the public one and the secret one, advancing his career with one hand and reading his weather with the other. And the remarkable thing is that you do both of them flawlessly, all afternoon long, without ever once appearing to do either. There is something almost absurd in it when you let yourself see it from a little distance. Your husband's promotion, his raise, the family's whole material future, rests in significant part on your ability to appear delighted with him in public, to stand there as living proof of his fitness to lead, on the very afternoons when appearing delighted with him is the single hardest piece of work you do all year. The better your marriage looks at the picnic, the better his prospects look. You are paid, inside his salary, to advertise the one thing you most need to hide. So you carry the potato salad and you charm the boss and you laugh at the fishing story, and when it is over and the long shadows finally come across the diamond, the Garretts will drive home agreeing that your husband is a fine young man with a lovely, easy wife, a real asset to the firm. The verdict is in, and you are the one who delivered it. You fold the picnic blanket and gather up the children, your real day's work quietly done, having sold, one more time, to the very people who most needed convincing, the bright and seamless front of a marriage you go home inside of. You go to the country club, where the surface matters even more than at home, because here the audience can end careers. The wives are inspected over bridge and cocktails, and a mark the makeup did not quite cover becomes a small and dangerous piece of news. It is not sympathy that travels through a room like this. It is liability. A husband whose wife shows damage is a husband who cannot manage his own home, and a man who cannot manage his home is a man who gets watched. So the rule of the club is the rule of the house, only stricter. Show nothing at all. The club is the picnic's older and colder cousin, and the stakes here are higher because the people are higher. The men whose decisions move in larger rooms, the wives whose opinions travel further and land harder. You arrive on a Saturday in your very best, and from the moment the car door swings open you are on a stage with extremely good lighting and an extremely attentive audience, every last one of whom has been trained, exactly like you, to read a surface for its smallest flaw, and so the whole calculation shifts here. At home the flawless front protects you from questions. At the club, the surface protects your husband from judgment, and the two things are not quite the same, because the club does not trade in sympathy. The club trades in standing. A wife who shows a mark, who seems a little brittle, who laughs half a beat wrong, is not met with concern in a place like this. She is filed, quietly and permanently, as proof that her husband cannot govern his own home. Mrs. Whitfield, who has been a member since long before you married and misses absolutely nothing, runs her eye over every wife who enters the way a jeweller runs a loop across a stone, and her verdicts, handed down later in low tones on the terrace, can shape a family's entire place in this small world. You greet her warmly, you hold her gaze one extra beat to prove there is nothing whatever to find. You have learned to pass the inspection of women like Mrs. Whitfield, because failing it is a luxury your husband's ambitions simply cannot afford. So the makeup goes on heavier for the club. The sleeves are chosen with even greater care. The laugh is calibrated more finely, because the tolerance for any error is lower here than anywhere else in your life. A slip at the mailbox costs you a knowing silence. A slip at the club costs your husband a partnership, an invitation, a seat at a particular table, and he will know precisely whose slip it was, and the evening will not end well, which is its own circular cruelty, since the strain of hiding the damage this flawlessly is itself exhausting enough to produce a little more of it. What no one in these bright rooms will ever say aloud is that several of the polished, pressed, and practiced wives gliding across this very terrace are running the identical arithmetic, holding the identical surface, hiding the identical thing behind the identical flawless laugh. The club is full of women passing each other's inspections and being passed in return, a whole society of mutually maintained surfaces, each woman privately certain that she is the one fragile exception in a room full of the genuinely serene. The serenity is the costume. Every woman here is wearing it. Not one of them can say so. The evening ends in handshakes and waving, and the slow procession of cars down the long drive between the trimmed hedges, and the verdicts ride home inside each of them, unspoken and decisive. You passed. The surface held all night. Your husband's standing is intact for another Saturday, secured by the very flawlessness that costs you the most to produce. You take off the heavy makeup at your own mirror, late and alone, and underneath it everything is exactly as it was when the evening began, which at the club is counted, precisely, as a triumph. You run the entire household on money you do not control. Each week he counts the housekeeping allowance out into your open hand, and from it must come the groceries, the children's shoes, the small repairs, the daily life of the home. There is no salary for the work that you do, because the work is not counted as work. If you need more, you ask, and the asking is its own small weekly lesson. The whole arrangement is presented as merely practical, and it is. It is also a leash, measured out in dollar bills across a kitchen table on a Friday evening. Friday has its ritual, and the ritual is the allowance. He sits at the kitchen table with his pay envelope and he counts out the housekeeping money into your waiting hand, bill by bill, approximately $11 and some careful change. And the amount is the amount, and from it must come the entire material life of the household for the week ahead. Groceries, the children's shoes, the thread, the stamps, the small repairs, the 1,000 quiet costs of keeping a family alive and clothed and fed. You take it and you thank him for it, and the thanking, you have learned, is part of the ritual too. The arrangement is presented absolutely everywhere as simply sensible, the natural order of a well-run home, the man who earns and the woman who manages, a fair division of one shared enterprise. And you are, in fact, a brilliant, frugal and tireless manager. But underneath the sensible surface, the envelope is a quiet instrument, and on the bad weeks you feel its edges plainly. The amount can shrink without any explanation. It can arrive with conditions attached, with a pointed comment about how it was spent last week, with a question that is really an inspection wearing a question's clothes. If you need more, for a winter coat, for a doctor, for a thing the children genuinely require, you must ask. And the asking puts you, a grown woman running a household, in the exact position of a child, requesting a favour from a parent who may or may not be in the mood to grant it. Mrs. Antonelli next door keeps a running tally in a little notebook she hides down in the flour tin, every penny in and out, not because anyone told her to, but because that notebook is the only place her competence is ever written down, the only ledger anywhere in which her enormous unpaid labour appears as anything at all. You understand the notebook completely. You keep your own version of it, in the tin can in the toe of the boot, in the dimes skimmed away so carefully that even you sometimes forget that they are there. The slow secret savings of a woman quietly building an exit she may never once use. Because that is what the money finally comes down to, The one simple fact that quietly governs all the others. There is no leaving without money, and there is no money that is actually yours, and so the envelope on the Friday table is not really about groceries at all. It is the leash made visible, paid out a careful length at a time, always generous enough to run the house and never quite generous enough to run away from it, calibrated, whether he intends it or not, to keep you precisely where you are, capable and trusted and entirely dependent. So you take the week's money and you fold it down into your purse and you begin, in your head, the long, careful arithmetic of making it all reach, the arithmetic you are never once thanked for and never once paid for and could now do in your sleep. The envelope goes back into his pocket, lighter now. The ritual is complete for one more week. You are the finest financial manager this household will ever have, and you will end the week, as you end every single week, with precisely nothing of your own, the dimes in the boot excepted, waiting there in the dark. You watch your children learn the family's first rule before they are even old enough to spell it, that what happens in this house stays in this house. They become expert readers of a slammed door and a lowered voice. They learn which floorboards to avoid and which afternoons to spend outside until dark. And they learn, without ever being told in so many words, that the teacher does not need to know, the neighbour does not need to know, that no one beyond these walls needs to know anything. You see them carrying it, and you cannot teach them to set it down, because you are carrying it too. The rule is the first thing they learn, before their letters, before their prayers, and no one ever sits them down to teach it. They absorb it straight from the air, the way they absorb the language itself, by living inside it. What happens in this house stays in this house. It is never once spoken as a sentence. It does not need to be. It is simply the shape of the world they were born into, the single quiet law that organizes all the others around it. They become, very young, expert readers of the same weather you spend your own days reading. They know the exact quality of a particular silence. They know which tread on the stair means go to your rooms now, and which means it is safe to come back down. Your son can tell from the sound of the car door, the very same way you can, what kind of evening is arriving up the drive, and he gathers his sister, and they make themselves quiet, small, and invisible. A skill no child should ever have to learn, and which yours have mastered completely. You watch them learn to lie, gently, for the family, and it breaks something in you each and every time. The teacher asks about the noise a neighbour happened to mention, and your daughter says, brightly, that Daddy dropped a ladder in the garage, and she has the answer ready before the question is even finished, because you have all rehearsed, without ever once rehearsing. The small, smooth explanations that keep the house sealed. They are good at it. They are good at it because they have practiced, and they have practiced because they had to. The neighbour's children sense it too, the way children always somehow sense these things, and a quiet sorting happens on the block that no adult ever arranges. There are houses where you may play loud and houses where you learn to step careful, and the children map them all without a single word, an invisible geography of moods passed between them on the sidewalk, in the precise private grammar of childhood. Your house sits somewhere on that map. What you cannot give them is the one thing you most want to, which is permission to put it down. You cannot tell them to talk, because talking is genuinely dangerous, and you cannot tell them in any way that would actually reach them that none of it is their fault, because the whole architecture of the house insists, silently and constantly, that everything is a secret and secrets belong to the ones who keep them. They are carrying it. You can see precisely how they carry it, in their watchfulness, in their too-good behaviour, in the way they go on listening to the house even while they sleep. And the worst of it is the plain fact that you cannot teach them to set it down, because you have never managed to set it down yourself. They learn the rule by watching you keep it, flawlessly, every day, for years, and you are the model they are studying so closely. So the silence passes to them the way the survival manual once passed to you from your own mother. Quietly, lovingly, for lack of any other gift. One more generation learning, young, to read a sky and keep a secret, and carry, without a word, a weight that no one in the house will ever name. You watch discipline happen in your house and you have no word for the place where it crosses a line, because the culture has not bothered to draw one. A father who strikes his children is not, in this decade, a father in any kind of crisis. He is simply a father. The strap, the belt, the back of the hand are ordinary tools of correction, recommended in conversation if not quite in the famous baby book. Where firmness ends and harm begins is a line the man of the house draws entirely himself, and no one anywhere is appointed to check his work. Discipline is a parent's plain duty in this decade, taken seriously, discussed approvingly over fences, and the line between firm correction and something worse is not a line anyone has officially troubled to draw. A father who uses the strap is not, in 1955, a father anyone would think to report. He is a father doing his job. You grew up with a version of it yourself, more or less, and so did nearly everyone you know, and that is part of what makes the edge of it so hard to find. The old phrase, "spare the rod," hangs in the air, half scripture and half folk wisdom, and it lends every raised hand a kind of cover, a respectable name to stand behind. When exactly does correction become cruelty? No one will tell you, because no one is asking the question, because the question itself would sound strange to almost anyone you could think to put it to. The famous baby doctor's book sits on a great many shelves now, gentler than what came before it, urging warmth and patience and understanding, and you have read it, and you believe in it. But the book is only advice, never law, and it competes with 1,000 years of older instruction and with the simple standing fact that the man of the house decides what happens in the house. The book can suggest. The book cannot intervene. It stays right there on the shelf, reasonable, gentle, and mild, while downstairs the older rules go on quietly running the actual evenings. And here is the thing that keeps you awake at night, the structural fact underneath all the rest of it. There is no inspector. There is no one whose actual job it is to come and look, to weigh firmness against harm, to draw the line the culture keeps refusing to draw. Miss Hargrove, the schoolteacher, sees the children for 6 hours a day, notices the flinch when she lifts the chalk too fast, and asks nothing, because asking is not yet anybody's job. The line between discipline and damage is drawn by the one man with the most reason to draw it generously, and no one checks. So you do the only inspecting that ever gets done, you, with no authority and no power and nowhere on earth to report your findings. You position yourself. You step in where you can, absorb what you can, redirect a bad evening with a meal or a question, or your own body placed quietly in the doorway. The household's only safety inspector, unpaid, unbacked, working without a single institution standing behind you. It is exhausting, and it is constant, and it is never, ever quite enough. And there is no one above you to telephone when it is not. Years from now, there will be words for all of this, and laws, and people whose actual job it is to ask the questions no one is asking tonight, to come and look and draw the line in real ink. Teachers will one day be required to notice the flinch. Doctors will be required to report what they see. The inspector who does not exist tonight will be invented, slowly and painfully. But tonight there is only you, listening hard at the foot of the stairs, doing a job no one assigned you and no one will ever know you did. You learn the edges of what the law will and will not call a crime, and you learn that your own home sits squarely in the gap. Inside a marriage, the statutes simply stop at the front door. There are things the law forbids between strangers and quietly permits between a husband and a wife, because the marriage itself was understood to contain a standing agreement that could not afterward be withdrawn. No court in the country says otherwise. The doctrine is old and unwritten and almost total, and it means the one place you are least protected is the place you are told you are safest. There is a particular education a woman receives, slowly, about where the protection of the law actually begins and ends, and the surprising lesson is that it ends at her own front door. Outside the house, you are a citizen with the ordinary protections of any citizen. Raise a hand against a stranger, and the law has a great deal to say. Do the same across your own breakfast table, and the law develops a sudden, lasting interest in looking the other way. Step back across your own threshold, though, and the very same acts enter a different country entirely, one that the law has quietly agreed, long ago, not to police. The rule is old, older than the suburb, older than the country itself, and it rests on a single inherited habit that marriage creates a kind of permanent consent, given once at the altar and not afterward retractable, a contract whose terms the courts will simply not reopen. No statute anywhere needs to grant the permission. The permission is assumed, built right into the silence where a law would otherwise stand. What this means, in plain daily terms, is that the kitchen and the bedroom and the locked front door, the rooms you were promised as shelter, are in fact where the law will lift the fewest fingers for you. The marriage that was supposed to shelter you is, in the cool eyes of the law, the very thing that suspends the rules which would shelter you anywhere else on earth. No one ever explains any of this to a bride, because no one says it out loud at all. And because the law assumes the consent, the clerk has no box to tick and the form has no line for it, and a thing with no box and no line is a thing that, officially, never happened. There is no name anywhere on any statute book for what happens in the gap. Judge Pruitt, who has quietly turned away 100 such matters, signs each dismissal without once looking up, not out of any cruelty, but because there is no charge on the books for his pen to hold the thing open with. The loop is closed and perfect, and you live at the centre of it. The men who wrote and kept these rules were not monsters. They were judges and legislators who inherited the rule and saw no particular reason to question it, who believed the law had no business behind a married couple's door. Their intentions were very nearly respectable. The result, for the woman living inside that door, was a tall, blank and immovable wall of immunity built around the one person she most needed the law to finally notice. It would take until the middle of the 1970s for the first real crack to appear, for a single state to stand up and say that the marriage contract did not, after all, include this, and years more for the rest to follow, one by reluctant one, into a future you cannot make out from where you stand tonight. The law protects the home by declining to enter it, and you are inside the home, in the deep quiet the old silence built, holding the exact place where all the statutes stop. You read, or you are told all about, the book that explains you to yourself, and the explanation it offers is that you are sick. It is a serious bestseller, hundreds of pages, written by a sociologist and a psychiatrist, and its argument is almost surgically tidy. Your unhappiness is not caused by your circumstances. It is caused by your education, your appetite, the unnatural modern notion that you might want something beyond the home. The cure is to want a great deal less and to surrender a great deal more. Serious people take it seriously, and it hands your husband a diagnosis with your own name written on it. The book is the kind of serious bestseller that gets discussed at luncheons and reviewed in the good papers and quoted approvingly by your own family doctor, and its authors are a sociologist and a psychiatrist, men of real credentials, which is precisely what makes it land so hard. It runs to hundreds of pages, and its central claim is delivered with the calm, unhurried and learned confidence of science itself. And the claim, in the end, is all about you. You are the patient here. The book has arrived to diagnose you. Its argument is tidy and quietly devastating. The modern woman, it explains, is unhappy, and her unhappiness is not the fault of her circumstances, her isolation, her endless invisible labour, or anything at all that is done to her. It is the fault of her education. The book holds that women were never built for the wider world, that ambition in a woman is a species of illness, that the discontent so many of them feel is a neurosis bred by the unnatural modern idea that a woman might want a life beyond the home. The cure it prescribes is simply to want less, and this is no fringe pamphlet from a street corner. It is basically a goop manifesto with footnotes, and it sits on entirely respectable shelves. The whole apparatus that keeps handing your unhappiness back to you as your own personal failing has an intellectual home, and this book is one of its founding texts, lending the entire arrangement, the dignified, footnoted vocabulary of diagnosis. Missus. Forsyth at the church circle has read it and speaks of it admiringly, the way one speaks of a hard truth bravely told, and she applies its lesson to the women around her with a small sad shake of her head, that one was always too clever for her own good. This one should never have gone off to that college. The book has handed her, and handed everyone, a perfectly respectable way to look at an unhappy wife and conclude, with what feels like genuine sympathy, that the whole trouble is something the wife brought down on herself by wanting. What the book finally accomplishes is the quiet theft of your own evidence. You know what is happening to you. You have the plain daily facts of your life, the fear and the timing and the mark beneath the powder, but the book reaches in and reframes every bit of it, tells you the feeling is merely a symptom, the wanting is the actual disease, the unhappiness is yours and yours alone, manufactured inside you by an education you should never have been given. It files the testimony of your own senses under neurosis, in a calm and learned voice that is very hard to argue with in the small hours of the night. There is a woman out there, though you do not know it yet, who will read this very same book in a slow fury and sit down to answer it, who will send a questionnaire to her old college classmates, and discover that the unhappiness is not one woman's private neurosis, but a vast and shared condition with 1,000 causes outside the self, and who will give it, at long last, a name. But her book is years away, on a shelf that does not exist yet. Tonight there is only this one, calm and certain and heavy in your lap, explaining you to yourself and getting it exactly wrong. You think about leaving and you run straight into the driveway. There is one car. He takes it to the station, or he keeps the keys in his pocket, and the entire suburb was built on the cheerful assumption that a family needs exactly one driver, and that the driver is naturally him. The houses sit miles from the shops, the train, the next town, from anything at all. Without the car, you are not trapped by a lock. You are trapped by geography, by distance, by the plain engineering of a place designed so the wife stays put while the world comes to her door. The driveway holds the whole problem in a single object, and the object is the family car, of which there is exactly one. He drives it to the station in the morning, or he keeps the keys on the hook by the door, and either way the car is his, made available to you on loan, for errands, with permission. Mr. Peterson across the street has 2 cars now and washes the second one on Sundays with visible pride, a small bright flag planted on his lawn to show the world the family has arrived. Most driveways, including yours, hold only the one, and the suburb itself completes the trap that the single car begins. This place was designed around the automobile, and for the automobile, the houses set far back from everything. The shops a long drive off, the train station miles away, the next town an abstraction. There are no sidewalks that lead anywhere in particular. There is no bus that comes when you actually need it. So your range on any given day is the range of your own 2 feet, which in a place like this comes to almost nothing, a loop of near identical streets that returns you, inevitably, to your own front door. You can walk to Mrs. Lindgren's. You can walk, on a long morning, to the little row of shops if there is one. You cannot walk to anywhere that amounts to leaving, because leaving requires distance, and distance requires the car, and the car requires the keys, and the keys are on the hook or in his pocket, on the train into the city. It is a strange kind of cage, one with no bars and no lock at all, a cage built entirely out of distance and asphalt, and the simple absence of any way to cross it. You are not confined. The door is right there, and it opens. You could walk straight out of it this very minute. You would simply have nowhere to walk to and no possible way to get there, which turns out to be a far more complete confinement than any lock could manage. You have thought it all the way through, the way you think everything through, the actual logistics of a real departure, and the car is where the thought always quietly stalls. Even with somewhere to go, even with a little money from the boot, there is the brute matter of physically getting yourself and 2 children, and whatever you can carry across the miles, the suburb so thoughtfully installed between you and any other life. A taxi would be remembered and remarked upon. The train means the long walk and the public wait. The geography itself is on his side, poured in concrete, planted in lawns. So the car sits in the driveway most days, gleaming, useful and idle. A machine that could carry you anywhere and carries you, in practice, only on the errands the household actually requires. You wash it on Saturdays. You load the groceries into its trunk. You drive it, with permission, out to the very edge of your permitted radius and back again, and you return the keys to the hook by the door, where they wait for him, and where they have, without anyone ever once deciding it on purpose, quietly closed off the only road out. You cook dinner like a woman diffusing something, because in a real sense you are. The meal has to be ready the minute he walks in, hot, correct, the table laid, the children washed and seated, the drink already poured and waiting. A late dinner is never just a late dinner. It is a spark gone looking for dry kindling. So you learn the train schedule better than the conductor. You hold the roast at the exact trembling edge of done. You choose the menu for its calming properties at least as much as its taste. The kitchen is where you do your most careful work of the day. Dinner is the most consequential thing you make all day, and it has almost nothing to do with food. It is a deadline, a performance, and on the wrong evening a genuine hazard, and you approach it with the focus of someone handling a thing that could go off in your hands. So you become a master of timing in a way no cooking school anywhere teaches. You know the train schedule the way the conductor knows it, the 6:14 and the 6:42, and you can read from the angle of the late afternoon light exactly how long the roast has before it must be perfect rather than merely nearly perfect. You hold things at the trembling edge of done. You orchestrate 4 separate dishes to arrive at readiness on 1 single minute, a feat of logistics you carry out nightly, and that no living soul has ever once noticed you doing. And you choose the menu itself strategically, for its effect at least as much as its taste. The foods he likes. The foods that sit well, that do not provoke, that arrive familiar, comforting, and unbothered, unlikely to start anything at all. You learn quickly which dishes are safe and which carry some small buried risk, a thing he complained about once, a texture he dislikes, and you quietly retire the risky ones, narrowing the family's whole cuisine down to a careful little repertoire of the reliably calming, a diet quietly engineered for peace. Mrs. Bianchi down the block, who is a truly wonderful cook, once told you across the back fence, lightly, almost as a joke, that she had not made fish in 11 years, and the two of you laughed, and neither of you said why, because you both knew exactly why, and the knowing passed between you, complete and unspoken in the small space of that laugh. Every woman on the street keeps her own retired dish, her own short list of foods that history has quietly lifted from the table, and not one of the lists is written down, and all of them mean precisely the same thing. The strangest part is the way it disguises itself as simple devotion, as a wife who just loves to cook for her family, who fusses happily over a hot meal every single night. From the outside, it is the very picture of domestic warmth, and there is warmth in it, real warmth. You do love them, you do want to feed them well, but threaded all the way through the warmth is the other thing, the vigilance, the timing, the menu chosen for safety, the constant low calculation that turns the simple act of getting dinner on the table into a nightly performance of careful, invisible management. So the food comes out at the exact right minute, hot and correct and composed, and he sits, and the whole evening tips one way or the other on a hinge you have spent the entire afternoon trying quietly to oil. Some nights the dinner does its quiet work and the meal passes like any other family's meal. Some nights nothing you could possibly have cooked would have been enough. You clear the plates either way, and you begin, already, in the back of your mind, planning tomorrow's, reading the next day's light, timing the next day's train. A woman who has turned her own warm kitchen into the most delicate room in the house. You arrange the family in the pew on Sunday the way you arrange the picture window, entirely for the benefit of the people looking. Everyone is scrubbed and matched and seated in their proper order, the very picture of a household at peace before God and the whole congregation. You nod warmly to the neighbours. You sing the hymns in tune, and the hour in the pew quietly does its job, which is to certify, in front of the entire town, that yours is a good and ordinary and untroubled family. You hold the youngest on your lap and you keep the picture perfectly still until the last amen. Sunday morning has its own production schedule, and it begins long before the bells. Everyone must be scrubbed, pressed, matched, and assembled, the children's hair flattened, the little gloves found at last, the whole family converted into the version of itself. The town will see filing into the third pew from the front at 5 minutes to the hour. You orchestrate the entire transformation, and you do it against a deadline as firm as dinners, because to arrive late and dishevelled at church is to announce, to absolutely everyone, that something at home is not running smoothly. The pew is a stage with very good sightlines. The whole congregation can see you, and you can see the whole congregation, and a great deal of quiet looking gets done in a church on a Sunday under the gentle cover of the hymns. The Hendersons are watching the Vances are watching you. Everyone is taking the weekly census of who looks well and who looks strained, whose children are behaving, whose marriage is wearing its Sunday face convincingly, and you have dressed your family precisely to pass that census without drawing a single remark. So you sit in the row in your proper order, husband at the aisle, the children between, and you hold the whole arrangement perfectly still for the length of the service, a tableau of a family at peace before God and the neighbours. You nod warmly to the Aldridges across the aisle. You find the hymn for the youngest and point him to the line. You produce, for 1 full hour, the seamless image of the Sunday family, and the image is so practiced and so complete that even you, sitting right inside it, can almost believe in it while the organ is playing. Reverend Atherton, the same gentle man who once sent you home with instructions to be patient, preaches from the front about the Christian family, the sanctity of the home, the quiet strength of a good wife, and you sit there beneath the sermon holding your own home together with both hands, and the irony of it does not even sting anymore. He is describing an ideal. You are performing the ideal. The gap between the two is the exact space you happen to live in, and the church, this bright morning, is built to make certain that nobody looks into it, and the performance pays a real dividend, which is exactly why you keep paying its steep cost. A family seen weekly in its pew, scrubbed and ordered and devout, is a family beyond all suspicion, certified by the highest authority in town. The pew is the single most effective surface you maintain, more convincing than the picture window, more durable than the Tupperware party, a public sworn statement of wholesomeness renewed every 7 days before the whole congregation. Then the benediction comes, and the family rises in its proper order, and you move up the aisle through the warm crowd of neighbours, shaking the hands, returning the smiles, accepting the small remarks about how the children have grown. You have passed another Sunday's inspection with full marks. The town files out into the bright mornings, satisfied that all is well behind your door, and you gather your family and drive home in the one car, the whole act folded up and put neatly away until next week, the pew having done, once again, its quiet and entirely respectable work. You are sold things by being made to feel that loving your family is something a woman can fail at. The magazine is absolutely full of it, the bright advertisements for the new mixer, the wax, the frozen dinner, each one quietly suggesting that a real wife, a wife who genuinely cares, would naturally already own this. The pitch is never pleasure, the pitch is guilt, dressed up in pastel and good lighting. Prove your devotion with the correct casserole. Demonstrate your love through the proper floor polish. You turn the page, and the very next advertisement asks you the same question in a different colour. Open any magazine on the kitchen table, and the advertisements are all doing a particular kind of work, and the work is to convert love into purchases, and then to charge you guilt if you fall behind on the payments. The new mixer, the miracle wax, the frozen dinner that frees up your whole evening. Each one arrives wrapped in pastel and relentless good cheer, and each one carries the very same quiet implication that a wife who truly cared for her family would naturally already own this, and that your not owning it says something quietly damning about you. The pitch is never really about the product. It is about your devotion, which the advertisement has decided is measurable, and measurable in exactly 3 recognized proofs: the gleaming floor, the white wash, the glistening roast. Is your roast as glistening, your gelatin as architectural, your kitchen as relentlessly bright? If not, the ad suggests ever so gently, perhaps you are not loving quite hard enough, and here, so conveniently, is the remedy, available for a price. The woman in the advertisement is always serene, finished, and flawless, always one easy step ahead of a household that for you never once stops moving. She is an impossible standard with a price tag attached, and the magazine prints a fresh version of her every single month, in every category, so that no matter how much you do, there is always one more thing a truly devoted wife would also somehow be doing. Mrs. Kowalczyk at the market reads the same magazines and takes every word of them to heart, and you watch her load her cart with the very products from the very ads, the new this, the improved that, chasing the gleaming woman in the picture down every aisle, and she seems no happier for any of it, only busier and somehow further behind, because the gleaming woman simply cannot be caught. She recedes exactly as fast as you pursue her. That is her whole job. An advertisement that could ever be satisfied would have nothing left to sell you next month. And underneath the ordinary guilt the ads manufacture, and every woman runs your own particular version of it, sharper and far more private. Because for you, the spotless home is not only about devotion or keeping up with the street. The spotless home is evidence, the standing proof that nothing here is wrong. And so the magazine's relentless message, do more, buy more, shine brighter, lands on a woman who already polishes for her life, and adds its bright commercial weight to a thing that was never, underneath, about floor wax at all. So you turn the glossy pages, the mixer, the wax, the frozen dinner, the woman who has it all and makes it look like nothing, and you feel the familiar small tug of the guilt they are so carefully selling, and some weeks you buy the thing and some weeks you do not. And either way, the next issue lands in the mailbox with a fresh batch of brand new ways to be found wanting. You set it on the kitchen table with the others, prove you love them, prove it again tomorrow. The casserole cools on the counter, and it is, by every visible measure, exactly correct. You learn that there is one threat held in reserve above all the others, and it is the threat to have you put away. A husband in this decade can have a difficult wife committed for her nerves with remarkable ease, a doctor's signature, a quiet arrangement, a diagnosis that fits any woman who simply will not settle down. The sanatorium sits at the edge of every argument as the final word in it. So when you are told that you are hysterical, that you are imagining things, that you are plainly not well, you understand it is not only an insult, it is a reminder of exactly where the difficult are sent. There is a hierarchy of threats, you have come to understand, and at the very top of it, above all the smaller everyday ones, sits the quietest and most powerful, which is the threat to have you declared unwell and sent away somewhere. It is rarely spoken outright. It does not need to be. It hangs over the worst of the arguments like a held breath, the final card, the one that ends the entire game, and both of you know perfectly well that it is there, even on the nights when neither of you names it aloud. What makes it so potent is that it is entirely plausible. A husband in this decade can have a troublesome wife committed for her nerves with a startling ease, a sympathetic doctor, a signature or two, a quiet arrangement, roughly the paperwork of returning a lawnmower, between men who agree the woman has not been herself lately. The bar is low and the procedures are loose, and the benefit of the doubt runs, reliably, toward the calm, reasonable, and sensible man, and away from the upset and emotional woman, which on a bad night is exactly what you can be made to look like. And the whole surrounding culture has helpfully prepared the ground for it in advance. You have already been told, by the best-selling book and the gentle counselor and the magazine column, that your unhappiness is a sickness, a neurosis, a female disorder of simply wanting too much. So the diagnosis is half written before anyone ever picks up the pen. Dr. Ostrowski, the same busy man who hands out the little white tablets, holds in his prescription pad a power he will most likely never use against you, but the power is real and it is entirely his, and that quietly changes the shape of every single visit. You measure your words in his office now. You take care not to seem too distressed, too insistent, too much. You present, instead, as merely tired, manageably tired, a woman with a small complaint and a sensible manner, because the alternative is to look like precisely the kind of woman the whole system is built to put quietly away. So the threat does its work without ever once being carried out, which is the most efficient kind of threat there is. It teaches you to manage your own face, to swallow the protest, to perform a deep calm precisely when you feel it least, because any genuine show of how things actually are could be turned, by the right two signatures, into the very evidence that takes your children and your home and your liberty all at once. You learn to be reasonable. You learn to be quiet. The asylum at the edge of the argument sees to that every time, without anyone lifting a finger. It will be a long time before the laws around all of this are finally tightened, before it becomes genuinely hard rather than easy to put an inconvenient woman away on a husband's word and a doctor's nod, before the loophole that hangs over your evenings is at last closed for good. Tonight the threat sits exactly where it always sits, at the top of the hierarchy, unspoken and complete, and you go on being reasonable in its long shadow, which is precisely what it was always there to make you do. You host the holidays, and the holidays are the performance turned up to full volume. The whole family descends, the table is extended with the leaf from the closet, the good china comes down from the high shelf, and for one long bright day you produce the warm and bustling home that everyone has arrived expecting to find. The cooking is enormous, the smiling is constant, the gathering must look exactly like the gatherings printed in the magazines. Underneath it the same old forecast runs, the same careful watching of the mood, only now in front of an audience of relatives. You carry the turkey out yourself and you hold the entire day up alone. The holidays arrive like an opening night you have been rehearsing for all year, and the curtain goes up whether you are ready or not. Approximately 40 relatives descend, the aunts and the cousins and his parents and yours. The table is dragged out and stretched with the leaf from the closet, and the house fills with people who have come, in some part, to inspect. A holiday is a family looking hard at a family, and you are the one who has to make sure that what they all see is exactly what a holiday is supposed to look like. The work is enormous, and it falls, of course, entirely on you. There is the turkey that must be timed to the half hour across a whole day of chaos, the pies made the night before, the good china brought down and washed, the silver polished, the rooms readied for guests who will look closely at every inch of it. And underneath the festive, enormous labour runs, as always, the other track, louder now because the stakes are higher. There is more drinking at the holidays, the cocktails starting earlier, the toasts, the open bottles standing on every surface. And you read the rising tide of it with the same instrument you always use, calculating, behind your bright hostess smile, exactly how this long bright day is most likely to end. The relatives see a feast, you see a forecast, and the forecast, with this much liquor loose in the house, is harder than usual to call. Aunt Rosalind, his mother's sister, who notices everything and forgives almost nothing, watches you move through the day with a critical eye, and you perform for her especially. The gracious niece, the capable wife, the happy and untroubled home, because a single word from Aunt Rosalind travels through the whole family and lodges there permanently. You refill her glass. You praise her ambrosia salad to the skies. You give her absolutely nothing to carry back to the others but the image of a woman thriving, the most expensive thing you will produce all day, made on no sleep between courses. What no one at the groaning table will ever once guess is how much of the warmth they are all enjoying is pure engineering, how the easy, warm, and festive glow of the day is held up entirely by your constant invisible labour, the timing, the smoothing, the quiet management of who sits where and who gets steered gently away from whom and when exactly the coffee comes out to slow the drinking down. They eat and laugh and praise the meal and feel, genuinely, the warmth of a family gathered close, and the warmth is real, and you built every last inch of it with your own two exhausted hands. Then the long day finally winds itself down. The relatives gathered into their coats, the leftovers wrapped, the compliments all paid, the cars pulling out one by one into the dark with everyone agreeing it was a lovely holiday, very likely the loveliest in years. And it was. You made certain of it. You stand in the wrecked kitchen afterward in the sudden, enormous quiet, the good china stacked and waiting, the whole day successfully held up and carried clean across the finish line, alone again now that the audience has gone home, and you begin, because someone has to do the dishes. You keep the front room immaculate, and the keeping of it is not only pride, it is a kind of daily obedience. The cushions are placed just so, the surfaces gleam, nothing is ever left out of order, because order is the proof that you are managing, that the home is well run, that there is plainly nothing here for anyone to worry about. A messy house invites questions. A perfect house answers them all in advance. So you polish and straighten and arrange, all day and every day, and the labour doubles as evidence, presented to anyone who happens to look, that everything inside is fine. The house is never quite finished, because the house is not really housework at all. It is testimony, and testimony has to be renewed every single day or it stops being believed. So you clean the way other people pray, constantly, on a schedule, with real devotion, the floors waxed, the windows clear, the surfaces wiped down to a shine you could nearly read a newspaper by. From the outside, it looks like the work of a woman who simply takes enormous pride in her home. From the inside, it is the work of a woman building an alibi, one polished surface at a time, because a perfect house makes a particular argument, and the argument is silent and extremely persuasive. The gleam is the proof, the order is the evidence. A spotless house, the quiet logic runs, can only belong to a spotless life, and you maintain the spotlessness precisely so that no one will ever go looking for the difference between the two. A messy house, by contrast, invites the one thing you cannot afford, which is a question. A neighbour who saw clutter might wonder. A visitor who found dust might ask, lightly, whether everything was all right, whether you were feeling quite well, whether you might need a hand with anything, and any one of those soft questions is a loose thread that, once pulled, unravels the whole garment. So you make certain the questions never start. You answer them all in advance, preemptively, with wax and bleach, and an order so total that no one ever feels the small inner prompting of concern that disorder would otherwise provide. Mrs. Tagawa next door keeps a house every bit as immaculate as yours, and the two of you have complimented each other on it for years. Over the fence, sincerely, two women admiring each other's flawless surfaces without either of you ever once asking what all that flawlessness might actually be for. Perhaps her gleam means only that she loves a clean house. Perhaps it means precisely what yours means. You will never know, because the entire point of the gleam is that it gives nothing away, hers or yours, which is the silent pact the two of you keep faithfully without a single word. And it is genuinely exhausting, this endless preemptive cleaning, a job with no completion built into it anywhere, because evidence must be maintained continuously or it quietly ceases to count. A floor waxed last week is not nearly enough. The argument it makes is only ever as current as its last polish. So you go again and again, around the very same rooms, not because they are dirty, but because the cleanliness is a claim that has to be kept fresh. A sworn statement resubmitted daily, your competence and your secret both written out in one relentless shine. So you straighten the cushion that did not need straightening, and you wipe the counter that was already clean, and the house holds its bright, total and faultless order around you. A front room so immaculate it could rent itself out as a showroom floor, answering in advance every single question that no one will now think to ask. It is the most thorough alibi you maintain and also the most invisible, because no one ever once suspects the woman whose house is perfect of anything at all, except, perhaps, of caring a little too much, which is the one accusation in the world you are entirely happy to let them go on making. You learn things across the years that no one ever sat you down to teach, and they settle into you the way weather settles into an old house. You know the sound of the car in the drive that means trouble and the sound that means calm. You know which words are safest left unsaid and which neighbours can be relied on to look away. You know the exact reach of the housekeeping money, the precise minute the train arrives, the way a long sleeve covers what a steady face cannot. None of it is written down anywhere at all. It lives in your hands and your timing, an entire body of knowledge built for surviving a thing that no one around you will name. By now you have become an expert in a field that has no name, no school, no certificate, and no one to teach it but the life itself. You did not choose the subject. You know the car. You know the precise difference between the sound of the door that means an ordinary evening and the sound that means go quiet, gather the children, check the dinner, and you knew it tonight before the engine was even off, the way a farmer knows the coming rain in his knees. You know the tread on the walk. You know the silence that is only tiredness and the silence that is something else entirely, and you sought the two of them instantly, without any effort, a fluency built up one careful evening at a time. You know the household down to the inch. You know exactly how far the allowance stretches and where it tears, the precise minute the train comes in, and how long the roast can wait past it, which dish is safe and which was quietly retired years ago, which neighbour will look away and which floorboard will give you away. You know the powder that covers and the sleeve that hides and the doctor who will not ask. It is an enormous body of practical knowledge, detailed, tested and reliable, and every single piece of it is in service of one quiet thing. And you know the calendar of it too, the long rhythm across the years, the way a hard stretch gives way to a gentle one and then circles back again, the apologies that come afterward, soft and seemingly genuine, the good weeks that make you half doubt your own memory of the bad ones. You have learned not to trust the calm too far and not to despair of the storm too completely, to live inside the weather rather than against it, because living against it costs far more than you have. It is a hard-won fluency, and you have, by now, served the long apprenticeship in it. None of it is written down anywhere on earth. There is no manual for this knowledge, no record that you even possess it, no one who will ever once ask you to demonstrate the 1,000 small competencies you have so painfully acquired. It lives entirely in your hands and your timing and your watchful, practiced attention, an invisible expertise carried by an entire generation of women who each quietly believe, wrongly, that they are the only one who ever had to learn it, each fluent in a language she is sure no one else alive speaks. So you carry it, all of it, the whole unnamed and unrecorded body of knowledge, through one more ordinary evening in a house that looks, from the street, exactly like every other house on the block. The lamp is in the window, the dishes are done, the children are asleep, or pretending to be, having learned to read the same evening you read. And you move through the quiet rooms doing the last small tasks of the day, an expert in a subject the world has not yet agreed to name, waiting, without quite knowing that you are waiting, for a future that will finally give it one. And so you spent the night reading the sky for a man's mood, timing a roast to a train, smoothing pancake makeup over the evening before, and running an entire household on an allowance counted into your open hand on a Friday. You hosted the Tupperware party. You kept the picture window lit. You learned which floorboards to skip and which neighbour would always, reliably, find something fascinating in the other direction. The women who actually lived this were not weak, and they were not foolish. They were strung inside a machine that had a neat little part for everyone, the doctor with his white tablets, the columnist with her gentle monthly homework, the minister with the door that only ever opened one way. They held households together with both hands while every institution they might have leaned on, leaned, instead, on them. They covered a great deal. They carried it quietly, and most of them were never once thanked for either. It would take decades to build the things that simply were not there yet. The shelter that finally opened its doors in 1964, the law that let a woman hold credit in her own name, the plain, ordinary word for what had been happening to her all along. None of it had been invented. They managed in the gap, with salon sets and sunglasses and a forecast running quietly behind their eyes. And morning after morning, they got their children to breakfast. Thank you for spending this quiet hour here with me, and for listening so gently to a history that the people inside it were never once allowed to say out loud. Now let the whole day go. Let your shoulders drop down and away from your ears. Let the jaw unclench. Let your hands fall open on the blanket. Let the breath go slow and long and easy. There is nothing tonight that you have to time, nothing you have to watch for, no door you have to listen at. The house, wherever you are, is quiet, and it is entirely yours. Rest now. You have earned it. Sleep well.